I had this little bet with myself. I was like, all right, we're going to go play the Pirates, the Portland Pirates. And if I play well, I'll stick around another couple weeks, see where this goes. So back in 2015, number one, there was barely any podcasts. Wholesaling wasn't popular. There was no real estate investing industry that didn't exist. Like it was just like it didn't exist. It was just like you flipped houses, you signed some contracts, you had rental houses. Like it wasn't like it is now. It's completely different. They are not for real, and you got to confirm that they're going to wire the funds to title within 2 business days upon the contract getting signed. That needs to be in writing.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Saucetown Investor podcast. I am your host, Matt Cox. We have an amazing guest joining us today. Our guest today is a real estate entrepreneur who has flipped and wholesaled over 350 deals, 350 since 2015. His company, Velocity House Buyers, does over 7 figures with a small team of just 4. He's one of the Hudson Valley's top investors. For those of our West Coast listeners, I've learned this since moving here. The Hudson Valley is a hidden gem of America. I did not know anything about it. One of the Hudson Valley's top investors, also buys in Delaware and Seattle. And before real estate, Greg was a college student with ambitions of playing in the NHL. And he still loves the NHL. We were talking playoffs before we hopped on here. In Greg's spare time, he loves to travel, golf, play pickleball, and experience cool new locations. He lives in Seattle. Folks, I am joined by Greg Helbeck. Greg, how you doing?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me on, Matt.
Absolutely. The timing is perfect. Having a New York guy on as the Knicks get ready to open up game 1 at the Garden tonight.
Dude, I am very excited for the Knicks because, I grew up there and they were always horrible. Like for not 30 years, but 25 years, they were horrible. And now they're on fire. So I'm just as excited as you are. It's awesome to see them actually doing well and get into the conference final for the first time in like 20 years. And that building is going to be electric tonight. So I'm excited to see your Instagram stories in about 5 hours.
You got it, man. We, for our listeners, Greg and I just talked sports for about 20 minutes before we hopped on air here. So we will not turn this into a full-on New York sports podcast. We'll talk some real estate today, but Greg, to bring us in, tell our listeners a bit about your backstory, just where you grew up, and then take that into how you originally got into real estate.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I grew up in Monroe, which is in the Hudson Valley. It's about 45 minutes from where you are in Manhattan. 45 miles actually, takes about an hour with traffic. So I grew up in that area, raised in a good family, parents, normal people, brother, sister, normal people, very nice area to grow up in, a lot of, just middle class and regular America. And went to high school and middle school, all that stuff. And I never really, thought I would be a real estate investor. I was like kind of always, chasing the next thing. And, middle school, high school, it was hockey, snowboarding, skateboarding, whatever. And what ended up happening was I went to college, or I didn't go to college right away. I went to play junior hockey after high school. So I graduated in 2013. So I'm 30 now. So this is, almost 15, over 50. I don't know. It was 12 or 13 years ago. Time flies now. But I went, instead of going right to college, I played junior hockey for a year and a half. So I went up to Massachusetts, wanted to play college and try to get to the pros. And dude, it was a dogfight. It was super hard. I was like, making teams, but I wasn't the best player on the teams. I was getting cut from other teams. I was going all over the place trying to make the next team. And it was just like a zoo. And I came to a realization the second season I did that, where number one, I wasn't in college yet. I was kind of behind. I knew this hockey dream was not going to work out. I just knew, because like I was getting older for hockey age. And, I was kind of just wasting money, and a lot of it was my parents' money, because they kind of said, like, we'll pay for your hockey for the first couple of years, and then we'll see where it goes. And if it doesn't go anywhere, then it's up to you. So I kind of had to pull the plug on that, or I pulled the plug on that. I literally, we were playing in Portland, Maine one weekend, and I had this little bet with myself. I was like, all right, we're going to go play the Pirates, the Portland Pirates. And if I play well, I'll stick around another couple of weeks, see where this goes. If I have a bad game, or bad 2 games, because it was a weekend series, I have to just call this what it is and get out of here because I'm just wasting my life. So we won the series. I didn't play very well. All the boys, after we got back, went to go get beers because we had like a couple days off. And I literally packed up my place and drove back to New York, like Irish goodbye. Called my mom. I was in Hartford. I was like, hey, I'm like 2 hours from home. I'm coming back for good. I got all my shit in the car. I'm moving on. And that was exactly what happened. Moved back into their house.
What did your mom say on that call?
She was like, I totally get where you're coming from. Like, I don't blame you. She kind of knew. She was like, all right, like, that's cool. Like, we get it. So she's like, I'm excited to see you in 2 hours. So got back home and I was like, all right, what do I do now? And I had to go to college. I went to community college for a year and a half and then eventually went to 4 year school, but I stayed home. So the key here is I made a deal with my parents because we didn't grow up with like tons of money, but we were like, middle class, right? My dad was a cop. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And I said, listen, I don't want to get in student loan debt. I said, that doesn't make any finance. Because I was reading books too. I was like reading books and I kind of understood like Rich Dad, Poor Dad and all that stuff. And
Right.
I was like, I don't want to get in student loan debt. That's just going to set me back. And I'm probably not going to have a job because I want to be a real estate investor. So we cut a deal where they paid for community college and then the cheap state college because there was no room and board. It was just like, a couple grand a year tuition. So I ended up not getting in debt, thank God. And while I was in college, I learned about like flipping and wholesaling, and I was 20 years old. This is like straight up almost 10 years ago, in September. And me and my friend Devin, who's a very successful guy in the Hudson Valley now, like we've been in it since day one. We went to this like guru boot camp when it used to be like a thing where all this like promoters were having seminars. And they taught us the nuts and bolts on like fix and flipping and wholesaling and rentals. And it was a kind of a big pitch fest, but we ended up taking the stuff that we learned and applied it. And it took me 9 months to get my first deal. And I came home after working like a dog out there with bandit signs and mailers and everything with like a $5,000 assignment check. I actually got it in the mail because I split it with this mentor of mine. So he mailed me the check and I was like, hey guys, I got a check. It works. So that's how I got started. And ever since then, I've grown the business to be fairly big now, in the Hudson Valley and now in Seattle and then Delaware. Me and my good friend Brett are partners. So we got a good thing going and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, so take us back to that first deal because I'm guessing that that $5,000 probably felt more amazing than making 50 grand these days does. Because
yeah, it's crazy.
It's like, whoa, this thing works. But
yep.
What you said is interesting because those guru events and seminars, you get out of it whatever you put into it, right? It's not a fix all. And so you spent 9 months trying to get the first deal. Most people, at 2 weeks, a month, maybe 2 months. They're like, oh, okay, it doesn't work. I'm done. Like, take us through that 9 months. Were you getting close on some? What was going on in that 9 months that eventually got you to that deal?
It's a good question. So first of all, this was like real estate years are like dog years. So like 1 year is 7 because everything changes so fast. So back in 2015, number one, there was barely any podcasts. Wholesaling wasn't popular. There was no real estate investing industry that didn't exist. Like it was just like, it didn't exist. It was just like you flipped houses, you maybe assigned some contracts, you had rental houses. Like it wasn't like it is now. It's completely different. So it was very easy to get leads. Like we were getting tons of leads off of bandit signs and little handwritten mailers that I would literally handwrite myself. Like there's a picture of me on the internet, like laying in a pile of mail that I made with handwritten letters and eventually got a printer. So it was easy to get leads. So I had no issue getting leads. I've always been pretty good at that. But I didn't know what I was doing. I was super young. I had no money. Like I had no experience. I didn't know how to underwrite deals. So we were just like fucking up all these offers and like we just didn't know what a deal was. Like we were like looking for like a complete desperate person. And like if we couldn't find that person, we like wouldn't make the deal happen. So I just didn't know what I didn't know. Like I just had so much I had such a lack of knowledge and experience. I didn't know how to make a deal happen. Like I just knew how to get leads and we would make offers. There was no systems, none of that. So what ended up happening was I realized I needed help and I needed help in my local market because, if people aren't familiar with New York, like it's a very hard real estate market, especially with like off market stuff because everyone's got a lawyer and it's expensive and it's you
have to close with an attorney in New York.
Yeah. Well, yeah, both people, seller and buyer, have attorneys. So there's a lot of red tape in that place. Like it's crazy hard. So, I didn't have money for earnest deposits. Like I just didn't know what the hell was going on. So I ended up Googling like we buy houses like local, like on Google. And back in the day, my still a good friend of mine, Dave Brown, came up and I hit his website up and I was like, hey, like, I'm new. Like, he probably gets a lot of that, but hey, I'm new. Like, what can I do to help you? Can we meet up? And he ended up meeting me for coffee. And he was like, listen, I'll help you on deals. Can you help me with some of my leads? Like, I just need someone to help screen these leads. So we did a little barter system where he like mentored me in exchange for me helping him with some of his leads. And what ended up happening on the first deal was, I believe this was actually from a Bandit sign. It was in Poughkeepsie on Glenwood Avenue. I know Poughkeepsie like super well now. We do so much business there. But the lady called in, she called off a sign, and she said, hey, I want to sell my house. My daughter lives there with her boyfriend. It's beat up inside. I want to get rid of it. So I was like, hey, Dave, like, this is a deal. I think, this lady like wants to make something happen. She gave us a pretty good price. Dave ended up getting it under contract. We agreed to split it. And then he found a buyer for a little 10K assignment fee, which now I'm like, fucking 10K doesn't even pay the bills, but it's better. It's still better than nothing, especially
Right.
when you're 20 years old.
Your
Like, that's a lot
first
of money.
deal, you're like, this is
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. In New York, I didn't have to put any money down in like earnest deposit. So, yeah, no, I mean, we wholesaled it, did an assignment, a contract, and I actually went to the closing and like saw the whole thing go down. And it was like so funny because like I used to like dream of going to closings. Like I was driving to a closing and I'm playing rap music on the way there, and I'm sitting in an attorney's office. And now I'm like, fucking, you couldn't pay me to go to a closing. I refuse to go no matter what. Like everything's done virtually now. Like it's like the biggest waste of time in New York is like tending a closing. But anyway, went there, saw the process. Dave mailed me the check once the funds cleared. And I was like, holy shit, like this works. Like I showed my parents proof of concept because they saw me like, every freaking weekend putting out Bandit signs, throwing them out, picking them up so I don't get fined, handwriting letters, driving for dollars, you name it, I was doing it. So they saw the work, and I was basically paying to work because I had to pay for the signs and pay for, whatever, the mailers. So I finally got, some revenue. And what ended up happening after that is I met other mentors who were a little bit more advanced than Dave, and now they're my good friends. It's funny, like I kind of became their mentor to a certain extent now, but we're on the same level, so it's pretty cool. But so they were a little more sophisticated and advanced. They had a bigger business, so I ended up like kind of working for them, like as like a quasi like acquisitions guy in exchange for like mentorship. So they would pay me like a piece of the deal if I went on the appointment, and then like I would basically exclusively wholesale them my houses that I got. So I ended up wholesaling them probably like 4 or 5 deals. I made like, 5, 10, 5 grand, 10 grand, 15 grand, started making a little bit of traction there. And then they really taught me a lot. Like they would take me to their job sites. I would walk these rehabs. I would like be in awe of everything. Like I remember one time I drove all the way out to Connecticut because they were also buying in Connecticut. I forget where it was. It was out by Danbury, like out that way. And they bought this, huge rehab. And I remember I just went there all day and I sat in like a construction site and I was just like smiling ear to ear in like a hot summer day, like watching them relocate the stairs. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And now I'm like, I never go to job sites unless like I want to film content or something. So it's funny how things change. But yeah, I mean, I learned all this information on like how to locally do it. But I still, and I'll shut up in a minute. I promise I could talk for hours.
No,
but
that's what we're here to
yeah,
listen to you. The
yeah,
audience listens to me all the time.
yeah. So I still like was kind of like, inconsistent. Like I was doing a deal every other month and, whatever. I was like really not in control of my success because I was relying on these buyers I was exclusively wholesaling to. And if they didn't want to pay me the wholesale fee, I was kind of like stuck with whatever they wanted to pay me. And then New York was really hard with the lawyers and shit. So I started to like understand marketing at that point. Like I kind of understood like, okay, I need to go after like really motivated sellers who are like back on taxes or whatever. So I was like, all right, the deals that I did were from like delinquent tax properties. Mind you, this is like 10 years ago. So it's like not saturated at all. And the New York issue is the attorneys take a long time to close deals and they want big earnest money deposits. And I wasn't comfortable with that at the time. So I told myself, I was like, this is now we're like coming into like 2017, 2018. I was like, making money on my own in real estate, but I didn't have like, like some predictable system that was producing like monthly deals every month. It was like 1 month I do 1 deal, the next month I do 0, then the next month maybe I get 2. And it was just kind of like super like ass backwards. So I told myself, I said, well, if New York seems to be the bottleneck here with all the bullshit, what if I took what I was doing and just did it in another market and just tried it? So I actually ended up getting involved with like a sales trainer too, where like I was helping him and we kind of had like a collaboration going. So I met all these cool people all over the country because he would take me down to his events and I would like, help, it was funny. Like I was like not doing a lot of revenue, and I was like a quasi sales coach, and I was like 21 years old. It was kind of weird. Like I felt like a fraudster for a minute, but I actually knew what I was talking about. So eventually I grew into it. But I met all these cool people all over the country, and the one group that he took me to was based in Dallas, Texas. And I met this cool guy in Dallas at the meeting. We had a good conversation, and I was thinking to myself, like, hey, if I ever want to like invest in Texas, I'll call this guy first because he's super cool. So I ended up taking my system in New York and copying and pasting it in Dallas, where I was just going after tax delinquent properties that were vacant. And most of the time that means it was also inherited, because if it's vacant and tax delinquent, most likely they just neglected the property. Started cold calling these people in Texas before cold calling was popular. Skip tracing.
Are you living in Texas at this point?
No, New York.
No,
I'm all virtual. Yeah, I'm still living with my parents. Yeah, I was still in college actually. I was still technically going to college. I was almost about to graduate. And I was like, all right, like if I can get these leads, I can send them to Jason and we can just JV these things. I don't have to physically go there. Cause I was also like, fuck, if I ever want to like move out of my parents' house, which was obviously on the radar, I need to like be in a situation where I can virtualize this business. So I can do a deal without physically stepping foot in the damn house. Cause then I can move anywhere I want. And ultimately that's how I got to California, which I'll talk about in a minute. So I ended up taking the system where I would go after vacant tax delinquent properties and I would cold call them, no competition, no one doing it. And I would get these deals in Dallas and I'd call Jason. He would go out there, he would walk the property. I would usually have it already under contract through like DocuSign, but if I couldn't do that because they were old, he'd get them to sign the contract. And we would just, in the beginning, we would wholesale the houses and we would make like, 20, 30, 40 grand a deal because these were deals we were getting so cheap because the sellers didn't even want them, right? So I started doing that like consistently, like predictably every single month, 2, 3, 4 a month, like clockwork. Did that for like 90 days. And then I started saving some money up because I was, making good fees on these wholesales. And then him and I started to just like close these things in cash because they weren't that expensive and I was only putting up half of it. And then we started just closing on them, wholetailing them. And now I started taking my nest egg I had and like multiplying that capital and started saving up a big bankroll. And then eventually doing that kind of dried up because there was only so many of those like ultra distressed properties in any area. So I was like, all right, like I can either keep doing this and go into like Houston or San Antonio, or I can take this big nest egg I have, or at the time it was big for like a 22-year-old or 21-year-old, however old I was. And I can start to put money into New York because I already understand New York. I was always still doing deals there. But I had like a real marketing budget. And then I also had money to put down for earnest or for hard money deposits so I could like wholesale these things. So then I started doing that. And then eventually that like turned into like the company Velocity House Buyers and started, quote unquote, scaling the business, which is a BS word we could talk about. And so that's how I got my traction.
Let's stop on that one for a second. Because a cool thing with your business, Greg, and we talk about this on the podcast a lot, is you have a lot of different exit strategies.
Yes.
You'll wholesale, you'll wholetail, you'll flip, and you do some buy and hold as well.
And novations.
And you do novation. So basically 5 different, and that stuff's great because it's a lot of ways to make money. And it's also a lot of ways to mitigate risk. If you get halfway through a flip, which I actually did recently, and you're like, oh man, the numbers aren't working on this, you can pivot and turn it into a rental. Or you have a wholesale where you're like, I'm not getting that big a fee on this. Why don't I just flip it myself? You have all kinds of options. So real quick, I first just tell everyone what a wholesale is, and then take us through kind of I don't know if you have a process for how you if you have numbers for how you decide what to wholesale versus what to flip versus what to wholesale, but take us through your mindset and how you work through those various exit strategies.
Yeah. So a wholesale, in my opinion, is when you buy a property, literally clean it out and throw it on the market. You don't do any work to it. Like zero. Like I'm talking, you buy a house, you junk it out. So now it's just empty and you throw it on the market as is. So it's just the combination between like a wholesale deal and a retail flip, a wholesale. Like you're buying it though. You're not assigning it. You're not novating it. You're actually the owner of the property with the utilities in your name, and you're selling it on the MLS. Depending on the condition of the property, it's either going to go to an investor for more money because it's on the MLS, or it's going to go to a retail buyer if it's financeable. So the perfect house to wholesale is like a grandma special where it can get financing. The roof is in fine shape. The mechanicals work. Maybe it's just got like old carpet in there and it's got like an old kitchen and old bathrooms, but like it's totally livable. And in the Hudson Valley and in Seattle, and Delaware, anywhere really, people will pay good money for those properties because they know that they got to put cosmetic upgrades, but the house itself is in good shape. Like the
People
bones of the
people
house are good.
love the. I mean, I'm a flipper. Like people love those deals where it's I can put
Yes.
paint, new
Yep.
bathroom, vanity, new kitchen,
Yep.
floors listed. That's everybody's
Exactly.
favorite deal.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. So that's the whole tale, where we'll just close it, clean it out, relist it. Now, rehabbing, and I'll get into that in a minute because I have like, at least in our business, I have like a little different variation of that. A rehab could be a big rehab, which gut job, permits, the whole thing, or it could be, I call it like a 10K or under rehab. I still call that a rehab because there is a component of construction there. You're painting, you're doing floors, you might change out vanities. Like you're doing some sort of construction where you're adding value to the property, from a construction standpoint. And I consider those rehabs because you do have contractors. There's generally a very small scope of work, and that could go from anywhere from new floors and new paint to new floors, new paint, new vanities in the bathrooms, new toilets, hi hat lights, right? Like those are like the lighter rehabs where you're not moving walls, you're not pulling permits, you're not pulling roofs on, you're not putting roofs on, you're not changing out, plumbing systems. So those are also great because, generally you can be under 20 grand on some of those Cosmo ones. This is if you're not doing like full blown like remodels, like kitchens, bathrooms, and you can add even more value to the property and most likely get more money. And then obviously the other end of the spectrum is like, gut job, rewire, replumb, reconfigure situations where like I just bought something up in Tivoli and rehab the whole thing top to bottom, looks like new construction, sold that for top dollar. That's like your typical HGTV rehab where like day one you're in a shell and then day, 45 it's brand new, So those are great as well, but you need to buy those properties at such a deep discount because you got to add a margin of error because anytime you have a big construction project north of 70 grand, it's going to be, there's going to be some issues you're going to run into, whether it's permits or, just shit being more money than you thought and realizing you got to change other things around. So I still do those, but I make sure that I do those with a nice margin in a good retail market where there's low inventory and a high ratio of, active to pendings, which means like, let's say there's 10 properties that are active and pending. I want at least half of them to be already pending. So that means that basically 50% of the inventory gets absorbed quickly.
Gotcha. And then, so how many buy and holds do you own now? Rentals?
I have 10. It'll be 11 next week after I close on my condo in Poughkeepsie.
Gotcha. So how do you manage that part? Because I'll talk to flippers sometimes who are like, it's great. You're ripping all these, or flippers and wholesalers, you're ripping all these fees. You're making
Yeah.
a bunch of money on flips. But then sometimes they're like, oh man, I wish I'd kept a handful of those because it's kind of the flip is the big check right now. The buy and hold can be kind of like your long-term wealth building,
Yeah.
recurring income. How do you balance that? I guess it's kind of a temptation always, right? To be like, oh man, I
Yeah.
could flip this and make a bunch of money. But if I kept it, in 10 years, I might be really happy I did that. How do you
Yeah.
kind of manage that?
So I'm definitely a big believer in rental properties, even though they are a pain in the ass because we
Yeah.
manage them ourselves in-house. So we have a system we can get into on that. But listen, the thing with me with rentals is that I'm all about location, school district, and the property itself. So I only buy rental properties in good areas, in good school districts, where it's not like like a D class neighborhood. So like I'll like the least I'll do is like a C. Like a C is like even questionable, but like preferably like B, A minus situations. Now those properties, most likely, you're not going to get them as such a discount because they're in good locations and the properties aren't completely banged up. And you're probably not going to get crazy cash flow because it's more expensive and the taxes are going to be higher and whatever the case might be. But I know for me, owning those assets over the long haul are going to really move the needle in the wealth department, right? If I bought like crappy, banged up, like Port Jervis, New York, like Section 8 specials, will they go up in value over time? Most likely, but is that going to be a headache to manage? And is that area as appreciating as like per se, like Wappingers Falls or Poughkeepsie? No, it's not. So I like to focus on the actual town or city it's in, and then the school district, the demand for rentals, how high can the rent be? Because a lot of these areas I have rentals in, the rent's very high because it's desirable. And that's how I decide if I'm going to keep it as a rental. And obviously, I got to make sure I can buy it at a good price where there's somewhat built-in equity. It doesn't have to be a steal. Because a lot of these rentals I have to put my own cash into them. Like I'm not doing true
Right.
burrs on every single deal. Like I'm buying a rental in Poughkeepsie right now. It's a one-bed condo, great area, great school district, the whole thing. I'm paying 108 for it. It's worth about 150, 155 as is. It doesn't need any work. It's literally good to go. And I'm getting a loan for 81. So I'm going to have to put in about 40,000 with closing costs. So I'm going to have to put that cash in, but I'm also going to have that built-in equity because it's worth 150 to 155. But it's in a very good area to do rentals in. The HOA is very, on top of shit, and it's in a good school district. And Poughkeepsie, New York has been a very high growth area over the last 5 years. And I think it's going to continue just because people are moving out of the city up to the valley. So I'm really big on the location and the school district. And then, in terms of balancing, like, do I flip it or rent it? If it meets that criteria, I look at where I'm at for the year tax wise, like, how many rentals have we already bought? How many do we need to have the bonus depreciation to make sense? Is our business doing well financially to where like I can keep this as a rental? It's not going to like fuck with our revenue. So that's how I make that decision. But I try to keep 2 to 4 properties minimum per year, minimum. Like usually it's like 3.
Yeah,
So
that's a
about
good lesson.
1 a quarter ish, kind of ballpark, a little less.
Yeah, I mean that's a good lesson for because in the rental real estate space, we get caught up in this. How many doors do I have?
That does not matter one bit.
It doesn't matter. It matters how much revenue you make, and it matters not just revenue. We know revenue, but whether it's sustainable or not. Like, are
Correct.
you and the sustainable piece that goes back to what you said about the neighborhood you're in and the type of tenant you're attracting. And if you're having constant tenant nightmares, you are, no matter how much money you're making, you are going to want to quit or you're going to want to sell that property. It's going to take over your life. And when you're running, your wholesale flip business, if you've got constant tenant issues, that is a massive opportunity cost if you're dealing with that stuff all the time.
Yep.
Instead of revving your other business.
Huge problem.
Revenue.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that I see where guys, and there's different ways to look at rentals because I know some guys out here in Seattle who are worth $100 million and they, buy and sell rentals because they take their equity that they've captured over 5 years and then they 1031 it into another building, which makes a lot of sense. I haven't gotten there yet, but
hey guys, we're taking a quick break, but before we get back into it, if you're enjoying this episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us to keep bringing you more valuable content. And if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, don't forget to leave a review. Please, it makes a huge difference. All right, let's get back to it.
I've been a big believer in at least where I'm at now, selling rentals right now does not make sense unless there was a crazy other good deal I could 1031 into. It doesn't make sense to sell my rentals because they're in great areas. I bought them at great prices. I got great debt on them. I don't really have an incentive to want to get rid of them, even though we run into garbage all the time. Dude, this was like literally a month ago. I think half of the units were vacant, either economically vacant or physically vacant, which means we're spending money on them. And I was like, man, I was watching my rental. Like we have like a property management holding account. And it's like normally at like 50K in cash, and it was down to like 25 because we're just paying mortgages and paying contractors. And I was like, man, like this kind of sucks. Like got millions in equity, but because of these locations are really good. But I'm like, man, we're not making any money. But I was like, you know what? We're gonna fill these properties up. We're gonna get them turned around. We're gonna get the freaking thing back on track. And 4 or 5 months from now, I'm gonna be like, thank goodness I got through that rough patch. Because in the long haul, rentals are a home run. They're a home run any way you slice it. But yeah, there's going to be short-term obstacles. You're going to have evictions. I mean, I just went through an eviction where the sheriff literally arrested these people on the spot. Like it's crazy. It's part of the business.
Yeah, I've had a brutal last couple months with my rentals as well. A couple evictions, a bunch of capex, but it's part of the deal. It's a long-term play, but don't fool yourself into thinking it's a straight up into the right.
And they're not passive either.
They're not passive. Don't listen to that.
They're very active.
Yeah. So hey, back to the wholesaling piece. I'm going to hit you with the question because you've been doing this for a while. You have a great reputation, but wholesaling as a whole has frankly a bad reputation, right? It's probably the most like controversial or most ragged on part of real estate investing. First off, why is that? I mean, I know why it is, but tell our listeners why it has a bad reputation, and then tell us how you're able to do it ethically. I know you have a fantastic reputation because I see stuff like the Washington Real Estate Investors page, and that page is like the worst.
Oh, dude. There's
talking
so
shit
many
to each
shady people.
other and ragging on.
Yeah,
But then when you
crazy.
post a deal, everybody's like, "Hey, Greg, send me the info." Like
Yeah,
you can tell
yeah,
you have a good reputation. So
yeah.
tell us why the space of real estate investing called wholesaling has a bad rep, and why
Yeah.
you have a good rep, and how to do it ethically.
Yeah, for sure. I actually really love talking about this just because, there's so much crazy shit that I've seen over 10 years. Like I said, real estate is in dog years. So when I got started, wholesaling was not popular. There was 4 podcasts on it. Now, wholesaling is like a mainstream business opportunity, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
number one, all the influencers, I'm sure I've contributed to this a little bit, like people online, YouTube, pods, IG, whatever you want to call it, TV commercials, like wholesaling is like a big promotion. It's a big business opportunity. So there's people teaching wholesaling, selling courses on it, virtual wholesaling, local, whatever you name it. So it's gotten very popular. Because it's gotten very popular, it's attracted a lot more people. Anytime you attract a lot of people into a certain business, there's going to be shady people. So what's happened is that big influencers have shared their thoughts on how they do the business, and they teach things like recording memorandums and holding people hostage if the sellers don't want to sell, even though the wholesaler can't even close because it's a bad deal. So like, let me just kind of drill in on that. So the answer is like bad business practices are getting taught, and then bad actors are implementing those things, or they're just bad actors that shouldn't be in the business, that are like, bad intentioned people, like who just don't care about anything else except for stepping over grandma's neck to make a quick check. I just made that up and it rhymed. So
That rhymes.
that's
Oh yeah.
stepping over grandma's neck to make a quick check. That's like wholesaling 101 in 2025. So what happens is that a wholesaler will get a lead and they won't know what they're doing. And the seller will tell them they want 300 grand for their house in Salem, Oregon, and it's probably worth 350 and it needs 50 grand. So AKA not a deal. They'll get the seller to sign a contract because the wholesaler doesn't give a shit, because if they can't find a buyer, they have no skin in the game. They'll get the seller to sign a contract. Contract will say like $100 earnest money. They'll never even deposit that to the title company. So that's basically fraud, first of all. And then they'll get taught by some guru that you got to not get snaked out of deals. So then they'll go record their contract with the local county as a memorandum, which is a cloud on title. So now that property is like lien. There's a lien on the property from the shady wholesaler. They'll try to dispo it for 325 when the ARV is 350 and it needs 50 grand, AKA no one's going to buy it ever. Not even in 2021, someone wouldn't buy that. And then they're going to say, "Oh shit, Sally, I'm sorry. I couldn't sell your house. I'm using my little weasel clause to cancel my contract." So then they'll basically tell the seller, "Hey, I can't move forward." They'll not unrecord the recording, which means it's still on title as a lien. The seller will be like, "Oh my God, I need to sell this house. I need to be more realistic on price. I'm going to call a good guy like Matt who actually knows what they're doing." You're going to offer the seller an actual number that you can close on, let's say 200, and then you'll go into contract with the seller. You won't know there's a memo on it. You'll get a title search back. There'll be a memorandum on the property for 300, and then the title company will say, "Hey, we got to remove this in order to close because right now there's a lien on title." And then they'll call the wholesaler up and they'll say, "Hey, you had a contract to buy this from Sally for 300 grand. Looks like your contract expired. We need you to remove the memorandum." And then the wholesaler will say, "In order for me to remove my memorandum, I need to get paid 20 grand." And then they'll hold the seller hostage and then you can't close. And people are getting taken advantage of. So that's the actual like fraudulent part of the business that, in my opinion, will make it illegal over time, because that's literally like you're committing fraud and you're not performing on your contract. So that's the technical like reason, in my opinion, it will probably become illegal. But the other side of the coin is that the wholesalers they're not communicating to the owner what their true intentions are, right? So we buy houses cash. We have private money, my own money, hard money, you name it, we can fund it, right? And if I'm going to buy someone's house and actually close, whatever I tell them, I'm going to do 100%. If I'm going to buy the house, we've seen it, we've walked it, we know what's going on, we know the numbers, done deal. They could take that right to the bank, right? No problem. Now, there are deals, Matt, where I'm like, fuck, I don't want to buy it. I don't think this is a good deal for me. I don't like the location. I don't like the setback, whatever, the lot's all fucked up, whatever the case is, got flood damage. I don't want to buy this for myself, but I think an investor would buy this. And I don't want to close, but I think someone else will close, especially in the Hudson Valley. I know the fucking area, like back of my hand. We've got the best buyers list. Me and Devin have a shared buyers list, and like literally every deal gets sold for the most part. So if we are going to strictly wholesale a house and not close on it, we will tell the owner, "Hey, Bob, we're not going to buy this, but we know an investor who will. So if you want to move forward at the number you want of 250, we need an agreement between us saying we're going to have the ability to buy this house for 250, but we are going to wholesale this. So we are going to have 10 business days to find an end buyer to pay us more than 250. And if we can find that end buyer and they close, you're going to get your money. But if we go out and try to advertise this to basically the public for more than 250 and we cannot find a buyer, we're going to come back to you and we're going to tell you that we cannot move forward and we're going to have to figure out a different way to go about this. So we tell the seller that we're going to wholesale their house. And the seller knows there is a risk that we might not be able to find a buyer. And if that happens, we're going to have to figure out another game plan. So because we are transparent with those owners on the houses that we just don't want to close on, we never, ever have an issue wholesaling houses because the owners don't give a shit. And then when we do find a buyer and we make 20, 30 grand, they don't give a shit. They're happy as a clam because they know what we're doing. They understand.
It's disclosure. People just don't want to be lied to. Disclose everything. If you tell people what you're going to do and do it, it's pretty easy.
It's guaranteed to work out almost. It's 95% success rate.
So
that's it.
For people that are just homeowners, not even investors, we did kind of an episode about this the other day about things to look for on an offer or a purchase and sale agreement that are not price, right? Because most people buy or sell 3 or 4 houses in their lifetime, right? They're
Ever.
Like, here's the price I want, and if that's on there, who gives a shit about the rest of it? And there's a lot of other stuff. One thing you touched on is the $100 earnest money.
That's a joke.
And if that's there and you're, like you said, you're disclosing to them, hey, here's the reason it's $100. It's because I'm going to do X, Y, and Z.
No problem with that. Yeah.
But if they're not saying it, so that's one red flag. Is there anything? So my parents, everybody gets calls from people. Hey, do you want to sell a house? Yeah,
rentals.
I get them.
Yeah.
What besides that? Like, what is there anything you would tell people to look for when you get a phone call from somebody as far as red flags that is a wholesaler, or they might not know what they're doing, or they're going to tie my house up? What would you look for?
Yeah. So I hope a bunch of owners listen to this because this will really help them, seriously.
Yeah.
And this actually helps you and I get deals because we're actually buyers. Number one, I don't care what state. Listen, New York is an anomaly. You got to put a big deposit down in New York, at least $1,000. That's the way it is, right? That's minimum. Usually it's 10% of the purchase price. So if you're buying a house for 400 grand, you're writing a check for 40 to get into contract. That's the truth. That's New York. Most people listening are not in New York, right? So let's say you're in Oregon or you're in Washington or Cali or AZ, doesn't matter, Nevada, Dallas, Texas, Florida. If you're actually like going to buy the house and if you're a homeowner and you're going to sell your house to someone who's claiming they're actually buying it, not wholesaling it, they need to be willing to put down, if they're actually buying it, not wholesaling it, they need to be willing to put down at least $2,500. If they're not willing to put a $2,500 earnest deposit on a property, they are not for real. And you got to confirm that they're going to wire the funds to title within 2 business days upon the contract getting signed. That needs to be in writing. And if you're a seller and you have realized after 2 business days, the person buying your house with cash doesn't have the balls or the cash to put a $2,500 earnest money check on it, they are not buying your house. I can promise you that. They are screwing you over 7 ways to Sunday. So that's the first thing, is some skin in the game. $2,500 minimum. Listen, I'm buying this house up in Marysville, putting down $7,500, non-refundable. Sent the wire to title the other day. Like, hey, let's go. It's time to play ball here. I'm closing on it. We're flipping it. So and I didn't have to do that. I could have probably gotten away with $1,000 or $2,000, $3,000, but I'm like, I'm actually buying it. What do I care? I'm going to spend the money anyway. Like, who cares? Yeah. So put some earnest money down, at least $2,500. And then number 2 is, if you're an owner, you got to say, hey, are you going to assign the contract to somebody else, or are you going to actually be closing on this to flip yourself or rent yourself? And if that buyer can't give you a straight answer in 5 seconds or less, they're going to probably screw you over and try to wholesale it. And there's no problem with that if they tell you in the beginning that's what they're going to do and you know what you're getting into. But if they're like, oh, no, we're closing, don't worry about it, we just sign this here and don't worry about it. But if they're very vague with that answer, like within 5 seconds or less, don't do it because they're going to screw you over. And a lot of people are shady. And I tell my team this all the time. I'm like, listen, guys, you don't got to be that good to freaking get deals. You just got to be honest, and you got to, communicate what you're going to do transparently, and you got to be you got to communicate it with conviction, certainty. Certainty sells, right? Vagueness does not sell. That gets people a little timid of stuff. So you got to be certain not like a barbaric like driver, but you got to be confident with what you're saying. Hey, Sally, this is not a house I'm going to buy. I'm going to probably want to assign this to one of my investors. This is exactly what you could expect. And within 10 days, we're going to know exactly where we stand. And you say that with conviction, sellers not going to care. They just want their money.
Yeah, I think the earnest money piece, and then one other one is if the inspection period is way too long.
Oh, yeah,
Nobody
like
needs
45 days.
a
That's
30-day
BS.
inspection period on a single family home. But the earnest money one, it's funny you bring that up. I wrote a blog about this actually because the state of Oregon's doing all this crackdown on wholesaling, and it's the classic.
As they should.
And but it's like politicians who mean well but don't really get how anything works, and there's all
Yeah,
this stuff
it
about
makes sense in Oregon.
yeah, we're gonna create
This is all crazy.
a registry for wholesalers, and you're gonna disclose your wholesaling, and the stuff's already on contracts. And my take on it, my proposal was, you want to fix what's the number one problem in the wholesaling industry? It's people's properties getting tied up for a long time, and their time getting wasted, basically. You
Yep.
want to fix that in one swoop. You could make one law. Just say anyone who's wholesaling has to put down a non-refundable $5,000 earnest money deposit. And that would
Facts.
solve the entire
That
thing.
would solve the whole problem. And the
In one
contract's
swoop.
not valid until title receives funds via wire confirmation or check.
That's it. It would literally fix the industry in one swoop. I think I sent it to some state representative or something. Never heard back on that.
They were probably too busy, legalizing crack out there in Portland.
Yeah, they did. They finally recriminalized drugs. So shout out to Portland on that one.
Shout out to Portland for that. That city needs some help.
Yeah. Hey, so we've talked a lot about the acquisition side, and that's obviously extremely important, finding deals. But the other side of wholesaling is the disposition side, meaning finding a buyer, an end buyer for your deal. I mean, I have basically one wholesaler in Oregon that I've bought deals from, and anybody else that sends me
Joe
one.
Taylor,
Yeah, Joe and
good
Brad.
guy.
Yeah, great. Like,
Good guy.
speaking of great reputations in wholesaling, like
PDX, baby.
I've bought
PDX
so many
development.
deals from those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anybody else that sends me one, I don't really care what their numbers look like or
Yeah.
what the pictures or what they're, because I don't have a relationship with them and I don't trust them. So talk a little bit about how we've talked about the acquisition side, but how do you build out those relationships on the dispo side so you get these, because we get so many people that are like, I've got a buyer list of 2,000 people. I'm like, cool. Yeah, I have a prop stream subscription too. I can.
Yeah.
We can all do that. So how do you build that? Because tell me. I hear from good wholesalers, you might have like 10 or 15 really good buyers who buy from you over and over, and that's more valuable than a 2,000 person list.
Yeah. So there's a few ways we go about it. If it's in Washington, I got a pretty good buyer. Not as good as the one I have in New York, but between my email list and the people I know here, and then that Facebook group, which does get some decent buyers every now and then, and the fact that Washington is just white hot and people want to do deals here, like if it's an actual deal, it will be sold within, a week max. Like if it's a real good deal, probably 2 hours. So that's the first thing. If you have a good deal and the numbers make sense, it will sell, right? Especially in a big market. In New York, now that's a little bit smaller. It's actually now it's similar size to Seattle, probably a little bit smaller if you don't count Westchester. But anyway, I have a really good list there, and that list has been refined over 10 years. So there's like serious actual buyers, serious realtors who have buyer clients who will, they'll send those to. And, my reputation, I've been around that market for 10 years now. Me and Devin are like some of the OGs. So, if someone sees me or Devin sending a deal out, they know we're fucking for real and they know that we know what we're doing. So I think number one, the reputation in New York helps a lot. Number two, the names and email addresses on that list are qualified buyers and qualified realtors. And then number three, the deals make sense. And they know that, 95% of them sell. Like I get guys hitting me up on email 3-4 days later saying, hey, is so-and-so address still available? And I just reply sold. So they know if I send something out, it's going to sell most likely, like 95% chance it's going to sell. So if they see a new deal they know they have to act quick because most of my deals sell, right? And sometimes, there's like a bidding war. I try to avoid that now because the market's changed and I don't want to like piss guys off, and I flip the really good houses anyway, so like it doesn't really matter. So they see like, it's first come, first serve, whoever, gets the attorney the deposit and signs the contract first gets the house. So they know like if I'm sending out a property, and I always send out good pictures, I always, like share reasonable rehab numbers. Like I'm not a knucklehead. I know what the freaking cost is going to be. I know what the ARV probably is. And like sometimes I'll even make a loom video. This is like buyers used to go wild for this. I'd make a loom video of me going through the numbers on how much money they're going to make as a flip with like actual data. And they were just like salivating at that. They're like, oh my God, I need this property right now. I saw your video. It's amazing. I'm like, all right, well, put down 15K earnest money and it's yours. So, just selling the deal off logic, not, trying to put a turd out there. And then also like, the Hudson Valley, for example, is a very diverse area. Like you got cheaper houses, sub 300. You have very expensive houses that are $1 million. And, those two houses could only be 45 minutes away from each other. So it's not like San Diego where like anything in the county is like $1 million. So there's certain things will wholesale like out kind of in the boonies. And, buyers might love that because that's like sub 300K houses. Right. But then I might have something down in Rockland County where the ARV is 750 and a guy wants to pay 600 for it because it's, near a synagogue or something, like, because there's big, different communities in my area. So it's like I have so many different buyers who buy different things on that list. You just never know with the deals we have, like who's going to want to take it. Like we've sold properties in Rockland County that were like near synagogues for over ARV on a wholesale.
Because
it's next to a synagogue. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Or if it's in Monroe where I'm from, huge area. Like, guys will pay like 105% because it's in Monroe. It's in the village, right? You got to be near a synagogue. Like it's all like, I know my local market so well. I know like the handyman, weekend warrior guys will want to buy the sub 300K stuff. They can pay more because they're paying cash and they're rehabbing it themselves. So they'll pay more, right? So I could sell that deal for more money to that guy because he's paying more. He's using cash and he's got his own crew. So like, I have all these different angles of how to get rid of these wholesale deals if I decide to wholesale. And then people have known me. I've done, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deals, and they know that I'm serious. I stick to my word. I don't fuck people over. If I give someone my word and they give me their word and we're 100% locked in with no vagueness, if someone fucking calls me an hour later and says, I'll give you 30 grand more, I say, sorry, I'm already selling it to Chris. And if I called Chris back and said, hey, some other guy offered 30 grand more, even though I gave him my word, I'm burning that bridge with Chris forever. And I don't do that because 30 grand is valuable, but a relationship is worth 300, 400, 500 grand. And people know that because I do that, they take me seriously and they know I don't fuck around and they know I'm going to stick to what I say. So then I expect that from them. So then if they start screwing around with me, I'm like, hey, bud, I gave you my fucking word. I had other guys who wanted this. Like, are we doing business or not? And if you don't do this deal with me, you're burning a bridge.
Yeah, you're off the list. Like, you're not going to get any more of these.
Yeah, you're done. You're done. Exactly. I've had that happen a few times, and I call them up. I say, hey, man, you decided not to buy the deal. You gave me your word. You burned a bridge. It's all good, and I hope you learn from it. I don't scream at them. I used to do that. Now I don't do that. I'm saying, hey, man, I hope you learn from this, and, wish you all the best.
Yeah, maturity. I'm still,
I used to go nuts on people. I used to call a stalker number, call them on a burner number, be like, "Oh, bud, like let's go box it out in the backyard."
Yeah, you're a hockey guy. Come meet me in the rink. We'll settle this. Yeah, that's the question. I'm a work in progress with it too, but you have to ask yourself when you get that feeling, because it happens. There's a lot of money.
It happens all the time, man.
But you have to ask yourself the question: is what I'm about to do or say, is it serving any purpose other than making my ego feel better for 10 minutes?
That's worth the price of admission on this podcast, dude. They didn't take anything else out but what you just said there, dude. They'd be much more calmer and they'd probably make more money. Serving my ego. I used to go wild. I was a wild child, dude. It was bad.
Dude, yeah, and it comes from experience, like, because the first time somebody screws you over, it's like, wait, what? Like, I can't believe someone, and then you realize this is just a thing that happens. If I don't get used to this,
no matter where you are,
I'm gonna go insane if this is how I act every time somebody,
dude, no good.
There's an injustice against me. It's just, it's not sustainable.
Exactly, and like we have. It's funny you're saying that because I want to share a quick story because this is a wild fucking example. I used to live in Nevada before I moved here, and we would do deals in Reno where I lived. And we got this old lead that came in from, geez, it was probably 6 months, like old mailing. Lady calls in, I'm in Japan, Brett buys the house. She thinks she's netting 300. She didn't realize she's selling for 300. Home run deal, right? And it was just like she wasn't the most sophisticated lady in the world, so she thought she was netting 300. We were buying it for 300. Get it assigned for 80,000 bucks. I'm like, wow, this is crazy, right? My boy's buying it, good buddy of mine, done business with him.
So she was getting 300 minus what she owed on her
Yes,
loan.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm like, man, and I'm in Japan. I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. Passive income, whatever. So I get back, I call her up because I didn't no involvement in this. I'm calling her just to make sure we're all good. She's like, okay, so when am I going to get my 300? I'm like, oh, what do you mean 300? She's like, oh yeah, I'm getting 300 grand, right? I'm like, oh no, you're selling it. I'm looking at the PSA you signed. You're selling the house for 300 grand. How much do you owe on your mortgage? She goes 230. I go, oh, you're getting that 70. She's like, I can't do that. I'm like, oh fuck. I'm like, yeah, I get it where you're coming from. I was like, wow, okay. So I'm like, and I could have been like, well, you signed a contract or I'll see you in court. I was like, hey, I totally get it. You probably thought that you probably thought that you were going to net 300. It wasn't communicated.
Was she being genuine, or like she?
I
genuinely...
thought she was.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Sorry, I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I thought she was. That's a good. I'm glad you asked that because I was like, she's coming off very genuine. I'm like, oh man, you got to be super stressed out now. You're probably like really, you're confused. So you thought you were going to net 300. She's like, yeah. And you're selling it for, she's like, yeah, I can't, 70 grand. I don't know what to do with that. Like, that's crazy. I'm like, geez. I'm like, oh, wow. I said, all right, well, listen. I said, I can tell you're being genuine on the phone here. I wasn't involved in this. I'm going to let you out of the contract. You don't got to worry about it. She's like, are you serious? Really? I'm like, yeah. Listen, could I take you to court? Sure. But is that going to look good in front of a judge? No. And am I going to feel good at night about that? No. 80K assignment. So I'm like, okay, I'll let you out of the contract. Tell title, hey, don't worry about it. Release, give me. I had put a real earnest money down, so I got my earnest money back. And I told her on the phone, I said, listen, I'm doing you a solid here. I'm going to believe what you said. All I ask for is that whenever you do decide to sell this house, give us an opportunity to do a novation. That's it. She's like, that's totally fair. Calls us back 5 months later, takes the offer for a novation, ghosts us, sells to a competitor, never reaches out to us again. And I'm just like, all good. Not going to call her, not going to yell, not going to call the competitor screaming. I'm going to just wash my hands and move on. The old Greg would have went buck wild. And now I'm just like, all good. We never made the money. Let's pretend we never got the lead. What am I going to do? Drive myself crazy?
I know. God, that's impressive. I cannot say I would be that level-headed on that one, but that is, I mean, you get to a place where you cannot battle every single injustice, or you're going to be running a law firm.
Lose your mind, bro.
More than you're running a real estate business. It will absolutely break you.
Yes.
And it just detracts from everything else that's going on in life and business. So That's a crazy one, though, man. That's fucked up, but
hey, it sucked, but it's like, hey, we never got the money. I honestly, when that happens, it does always sting, obviously, because it's like, damn, you work hard to get these deals. But I always reframe it to where, wait, let's pretend we never got the lead. Let's pretend they never called the postcard. Let's pretend they never went on Google. That's the only way that I've justified reframing that to not lose my mind. But I don't let everyone out of contracts, by the way. I'm not some saint. I've had lawsuits and we've sued sellers. Like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm like, Jesus' cousin or anything like that. I've definitely gotten my fair share of sellers to get held accountable when they didn't do what they said they were going to do. But it's a case-by-case basis. You got to take it, one deal at a time.
Yeah, listeners, if you're under contract with Greg right now, this is not a open invite to re-trade him.
I will file a list pendants if you are genuinely trying to fuck me over. I can promise you that. And I got a good lawyer.
All right, man. Well, before we get you out of here, I got 3 final questions that we ask all of our guests. So the first one, we talked a little bit about it in your intro, but aside from real estate and running your business, what do you like to do for fun? I know you mentioned hockey, but what are your hobbies?
So I play men's league hockey on Tuesday nights. I play pickup hockey on Friday afternoons. I'm always traveling. I'm always going on vacation somewhere or going to New York to see my family. I'm always hanging out with my girlfriend and my dog. I walk my dog all over the neighborhood all the time. We're always checking out spots in the
What
local.
neighborhood are you in Seattle, by the way?
I live in West Seattle in the Gatewood
Nice.
area, so it's
Oh,
right
great
over
spot.
by
Yeah.
like Lincoln Park. It's a nice, quiet neighborhood.
Yeah.
Uh, so there's a ton of walking around here. So I'm always doing that. Recently, I've been on a real big like journey to just upgrade my identity in terms of my views and beliefs and actions on eating a proper diet. I don't even like saying the word diet because that makes it seem like it's like you do it for a little bit and then you stop. But I'm working on just using food for fuel and eating clean forever because I've been doing it for like 3 weeks since I ironically went on vacation, and I feel amazing. And I have so much more energy, and I'm really like reading all this crap on like how bad seed oil is and processed food and like bad water, and like I'm really like into that now. So I've been super super intentional on just transforming the way that I eat and eating for energy versus eating for pleasure. And it's been awesome, dude. Because like I'm even thinking now, like let's say you go, and I'm totally on a rabbit hole, but like let's say you're going to like a gala in New York City, right? There's 150 people there. You're in a tuxedo. It's a Knicks gala. You're meeting all the stars. There's probably going to be like weenies in a blanket there and fucking sliders and all that stuff, right? And isn't that stuff really good to eat,
Of
right?
course.
But if you're going to that gala, you're not going to that gala to eat fucking weenies and sliders. You're going to that gala to be around elite people in the Knicks, right? So I'm looking at like the biggest hurdle I see in this journey is like going to events and like eating like shit just because it's there. But now I'm like, okay, if I'm going to an event like a real estate meetup and there's like pizza there, I'm not going for the pizza. If I want a pizza, I'd order a pizza to my house. I'm going to that event to connect with people and add value. So now I'm like, once I can overcome that, I can like go anywhere and like not be tempted to eat like garbage and always just keep feeling good and keeping it consistent. But that's what I've been down recently is like, really like dialing in my, nutrition and keep getting better at men's league because I took a 10-year break from hockey once I stopped to now. And, I'm getting back on the saddle and I'm, training and riding the bike and playing my little, fighter pilot brain training game that I used to play and, studying film. And like, it's pretty funny how I'm like treating it like I was back when I played junior A hockey. So trying to just crush it out there in the men's league and dance around these old guys.
Love it, man. I like that reframe. What am I going to this event for? It's not
Think about it. That's my bottleneck. It's like
eat
I'll
and
go
drink.
somewhere and there'll be pizza and I'll be like, oh fuck, there's pizza here. I might as well eat it. But then I'm
Yeah,
like, wait, like I'm not going here to eat pizza. I'm going here to learn about something. So just don't eat the
right.
fucking pizza.
All right. Well,
Think
that
it's
takes us. So the next one, and you kind of touched on this, but you can share what you're reading. But the next question we always ask is, what is the best thing you're reading, watching, or listening to? And it can be entertainment, or it can be self-help, business, whatever.
This
Good.
book, Good Energy. It's the surprising connection between metabolism and limitless health. So it's basically talking
Write that
about
down.
how to be optimal with your diet and other things. Just getting a lot of toxic stuff out of your life, like physically toxic stuff. So I'm reading that book. In terms of entertainment, dude, I'm a hockey junkie. I'm watching the Stanley Cup playoffs like a lunatic. I'm watching basketball when the Knicks are on. I love sports. It's my escape from business. And if I had my druthers, I could literally watch playoff hockey from sunrise to sundown, even though it's only on 3 hours a night. So between reading books and watching hockey and basketball, dude, and even baseball in the summer, I just love. I'm a sport junkie.
Yeah, somebody asked me the other day what like shows I'm watching right now, and I go, I'm watching the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, that's my
That is my
favorite show.
because it's every single night too, and then you got hockey as well. So, and last thing here, Greg, before we get you out of here, where can people follow you? I know you have a cool Instagram, so definitely give us that. And then anything else you want to plug, like if you want to share where people can send you deals or anything like
Yeah,
that, floor's yours.
totally. You can follow me on Instagram at Grego_37, youtube.com/@ Greg Helbeck, REI, real estate investing. And then if you have a house in like the Hudson Valley or Seattle or Delaware, you just email me, greg@velocityhousebuyers.com. If you're a wholesaler, I'd love to buy from you. I've paid wholesalers six-figure fees. If I like the deal, I'll take it down. You don't got to worry about someone like fucking you over. So If you're a wholesaler and you're in those areas, I'd love to work with you. We've done very well working with wholesalers, and any way I can help someone, it's you can always message me or email me, and I'll get back to you pretty quickly.
Greg, you're the man. This has been a pleasure. Let's catch a Knicks or Rangers game next time you're out here.
Hell yeah, dude! I'll get right down to the chin of Manhattan and meet you at the Garden.
All right, buddy. Thanks for making time for us.
Hey, my pleasure.
That is a wrap for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Saucetown Investor. If you got value from this, drop us a comment and let us know your thoughts. Did you have a big takeaway? Is there a topic you want to see us cover next time? Is there a guest you want to see interviewed? DMs are open. Business is at Saucetown Properties, and my personal, you can DM me personally, is at The Real Matt Cox 4. We'd also like to ask you kindly to please like and subscribe. You can also follow along with the Saucetown Investor blog. That's mattcox444.substack.com. Thanks again, guys, and until next time, keep investing and stay saucy, Saucetown.